Hello everybody, and welcome to my one video on the Kodak Print-O-Matic. The Kodak Print-O-Matic is, well, it's a near toy digital viewfinder camera. Now what that means is that if you're familiar with old film viewfinder cameras, they would have a window off to the side that you would look through from behind the camera to line up your scene, but no way to tell what's in focus. This is sort of like a viewfinder, except that traditionally old film viewfinder cameras, you would focus something. This is kind of more like a really tiny digital box camera that prints instantly. That's probably the best description of it. It's a digital box camera. It has program mode only shooting, which means that you press the button, it does what it wants to, and Bob's your uncle. The camera controls everything about when a picture is going to be taken, what it's going to look like. You have very limited input. You can switch between color and black and white, and you can do a couple of creative effects with it as well that I will talk about in this video's notes section if you want to skip ahead to that. And also, the one thing to note, when you look through the viewfinder here, there are some framing lines in it. The actual image area, if what you saw in your viewfinder was this camera exactly, the actual image is slightly larger, and so that allows you to crop a little bit digitally or have a little bit of sloppiness in your viewfinder use. You'll have a little bit of forgiveness in your final image. The target market for this camera, insofar as I can tell, are fun camera enthusiasts, people who really enjoy using cameras. That said, I think that there is a strong case to be made that the best market for this should be large format film shooters, because this is fantastic for previewing images before you take them to make sure your composition is correct. That's one of the uses I found with this camera that is most valuable, is that I can take a snapshot of a scene before I use a piece of 4x5 film and make sure that I'm happy with the way that the general composition is set up, so that I can see it in print to know that it's going to be a decent image. It is super simple to use. However, it does have a short battery life. I think the manual rates it at like 45 prints, which every time you take a picture, it generates a print, whether you have paper or not. I've pushed this to 90 on a single shoot as it's been brand new, and that's also with conserving the battery, turning it off after each use and things like that. It's designed to take photos to print at the time that they're taken, as well as preserve a digital copy for you to share online. It has a super slow buffer, and I'll demonstrate that in this video in just a second. But it does have a very cute design. I do think this is an adorable camera. I really enjoy carrying it around because it is so light and fun to use. So what we're going to do real quickly is I'm going to turn this on, if it's going to cooperate with me. And I'm going to show you how slow and small the buffer on this camera is. Just took a picture. Nope. 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 There we go. Now we can take a second. Let's see how long till we can take a third. Oh, there we go. There's a third. That's a good one. That's faster than usual. It's just started printing. There's no paper in it the first shot. And now this is going to take a while. The buffer's basically going to be full until at least 2 of the images print. It might let me take another picture after the first, but not generally. You can see. So this is not a camera you can use to just rapid fire pictures one after the other in order to get quick shots of something that's happening. This is something you're going to use, and then a couple of minutes later you can use it again without issue. These are made by C&A Global with a license to use the Kodak brand. They're made in Vietnam. Starting in 2062, this is being filmed in November of 2019. Insofar as I can tell, they're still being made, but what I can tell you for certain is that they were made until at least November of 2018, because the cameras say in here underneath that barcode right there when it was made, and mine says November 2018, so this camera's a year old right now. It was preceded by nothing directly that I could find, and it was concurrent with multiple other cameras made by C&A, both for Kodak and other brands. And it was followed by possibly the Kodak Smile camera, which seems like a likely successor to and improvement on this general package. So now, as we're going to do, let's go through some of the camera's features. We're going to start on the top. On the top of the camera, and I've adjusted the brightness a little bit so you can actually see what's up here. We have the shutter release here, and the switch that goes from color mode to black and white. Black and white has 3 gray dots of varying darkness, and color mode has an RGB, red at the point, green near my finger, and blue on the back side, 3 dots to indicate that you're in color mode. On the front of the camera, we have the lens, which is at the very center right here. That little small window is the lens, and then there's a large plastic surround to it that indicates the make, Kodak Printomatic, well, the license information, Kodak, the model, Printomatic. 8mm 3:2 picture. So what that's telling you is that the lens has a fixed focus of 8mm and that the aspect ratio is 3:2. Now, this has a field of view that looks roughly equivalent to a 28mm, something in that range in 35mm terms. To me, it might be slightly wider than that. So you can, someone smarter than I who knew the exact angle of view of this camera could use that 8mm focal length to figure out how big the sensor is. It's not huge. It's maybe cell phone size, maybe slightly larger, but I don't think it's much larger than cell phone size. Kodak logo, flash, viewfinder window. You'll notice a black ring here on mine. I crazy glued this in place, and we'll talk about why that is and some things that could have been done a little bit differently with this camera a little bit later on in the video. On the back of the camera, pretty simple. We have up here the viewfinder window, the power button. This is the release to open up the area to place the zinc paper. We have these 3 lights and icons underneath them. This one nearest the edge has a battery icon. If that's white, you have enough battery to use the camera. If it's red, you don't, or your camera will shut off fairly quickly. In the middle is a printer icon, and when we turn it on, you should see that everything lights up to let you know that it's turning on before it beeps and sings. There it sings. Now, if we were to take a picture and print it, that printer light would turn white. If the printer jams, it turns red. Then we have the SD card icon. If it's white, it means the SD card is loaded. If it's red, it means there's no SD card. If all 3 of these are flashing red, it means your camera has had a brain fart and that it needs to be reset. We'll talk about that in just a second. That has happened to me twice. One of them, the printer just kept running and running and running and running before I was able to get it to reset. It went on like that for about 5 minutes. Probably not good for the hardware. At any rate, so there's minimal ways in which this camera can communicate with you, and they are all done through the little beeps it makes and through these lights. It'll beep when it turns on and off, beep when it takes a picture, beep when it can't take a picture, and then whether these are white, red, or flashing red will tell you what's going on with your camera. If we look at the bottom of the camera, unbelievable. So now you can see that the printer light is flashing white because I accidentally hit the button to take a picture, and that will flash white until it finishes printing again, because there's no paper in here, the photo. So I'm going to turn it off so that we don't have to go through that again. On the bottom of your camera here we have the charging port. The battery is built into it. You can't access it without taking the camera apart, so you charge it through there. That little round dot is the reset pin button. There's the speaker, and this is the SD card port. It uses a micro SD card. You can reset the camera with a safety pin, a cell phone card release pin, or when I go hiking, because I keep a lot of records when I use my cameras, I often bring an ultra fine point Sharpie, and an ultra fine point Sharpie will fit into that hole to reset your camera. So basically you just need something that is small and can reach in there to push that button in the event that your camera locks up. On the inside of the camera, there's not a whole lot to see here. We have the zinc paper loading instructions right here. Then over here on this side we have things like the camera serial number, which is underneath that barcode, when it was made, the certifications, the Kodak Print-O-Matic instant print camera information and things like that. And then this is, like I said, where you actually load the zinc paper, and we'll see how to do that in just a moment. So let's start talking about how to actually use your Kodak Print-O-Matic. And one of the things that you can do, we're going to start by talking about charging the battery. It comes with a USB cable, but no wall charger. So if you have a wall charger, that's great. You can just plug this into that wall charger and then charge it through a standard micro USB port. That's what this uses. Really simple, standard, charges exactly like a cell phone. So if you have used a cell phone, which if you're watching this video, statistically something like 63% of you, I can guarantee, own cell phones and use them for YouTube, then you know how to charge it. And then once charged, this is good for around 40 to 90 photos, so not a whole lot. If you have, 4 packs or 5 packs of zinc paper, you're going to have plenty to go through an evening with friends and hand out photos to people and things like that. Next thing we're going to talk about is how to actually load the zinc paper. And I'm going to do an entire video comparing the different zinc paper makes. And those are Canon, LifePrint, HP, Polaroid, and Kodak. And I'm going to use a printer, a different printer than this, to look at 10 identical photos printed on each of those and how they differ, because there are color and tone and shockingly sharpness differences between the paper, and I didn't expect any of that when I tried that experiment. But long and short of it is there are some differences by make with the zinc paper. So to load it is pretty simple. I've got the Kodak zinc paper right here, which is one of the pretty good ones. We're just going to take it out of its package. Now, if you do decide to use other makes of zinc paper in this camera, you can, but you can not use it unless you have a Kodak calibration sheet, which I've lost. So each pack of film comes with a calibration sheet, which is a blue sheet that has a barcode on it, and it goes blue sheet down, so when you load it, you can see a clear white surface to the photos. And then they go in like this. And when you take your first photo, it will spit out the calibration sheet. It comes out, goes back in, comes back out, and then it will print your first photo. And photos from this look generally decent. Here are some from a recent hike that I took. Steinbeck before he started looking like a happy pup. There we go. These were on LifePrint, came out of this camera. If you use one of the other makes of zinc paper, keep the color calibration sheet from this camera, or that comes out from the Kodak, and use it in place of the color calibration sheet on the other makes. For some reason, the color calibration sheets of the other makes cause this camera to give you an error. It won't use them. So you can trick it by using the color calibration sheet that comes with a pack of Kodak paper. Since some of the other makes are a little bit less expensive, that's a way to save a few bucks, 20 cents a sheet up to, give or take. And that can add up if you're taking 4 or 5 packs of these at an event or when you're hanging out with friends every couple of weeks. So that's how you load the paper, and then it will just print it as needed. What I'm going to do now is show you how that print looks, assuming that it's going to cooperate. So say cheese, smile real big. Oops. And so what it's doing now is it's warming up the printer, because the printer works by applying heat to the paper. My theory on this, and I haven't been able to conclusively prove it, is that the printer basically has like a row of heating elements that apply different temperatures to the paper. and that those different temperatures somehow cause different colors to form on the paper. So it's sort of like a heat jet instead of an inkjet paper. And here you go, look, it's all of you beautiful people out there in YouTube. It's shocking, you look exactly like a Pentax K3 being held up underneath a light. There you go. Okay, let it finish up here, taking this oopsie photo. That is some amazing artwork right there. Look at that. It's so dark, like a void. It's calling to me. No, it's not. Okay, so let's turn this, let's not turn this off. The next thing I'm gonna do is talk about the flash. The flash on this is automatic, and I'm gonna trick it into triggering the flash to show you how bright it is. Oh, it's bright. It's pretty bright. Okay. But the flash will trigger when it needs to and only when it needs to. And it's pretty decent. If you're within about 5 feet of the camera, the flash is more than capable of illuminating whatever you're taking a picture of, or if you're taking a picture of something that's within 5 feet of the camera. Next thing I want to do is put everything together and show you how to take a picture with this camera. It's really basic and really simple. You just turn this on, and then you stand behind the camera right here, okay? And you're gonna look through the viewfinder, use the framing lines inside of the viewfinder to frame up your image, and then you decide whether you want it to be in black and white or color, and then just hold the shutter button to take the picture. That's it, and if you have paper in here, you wait for the print to shoot out, so you can hand it out or put it in your wallet, whatever you do. If you don't have paper, then you just wait until the buffer clears and you can take another photo. There are no double exposures with this camera. It is the ultimate in basic. You can't make it do a double exposure. I suppose in theory, you could take a piece of paper that's been printed and run it through again. I haven't actually tried that. So if you have, let me know if that works, but there's no way to do a digital double exposure with this. Now I'm curious. Let's find out right now if that idea will work. I don't remember if this takes from the bottom, so I got to take all of these out here. So we're going to take this picture from a different orientation just to make sure it's easy to see if this is actually going to work. And now we wait. So you might have noticed that this started printing a lot faster than previously, and that's because the printer has warmed up. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. It prints more quickly when you have printed previously. And on extremely cold mornings, when I had this out up at Chasm Lake, for instance, and it was in the 30s or 40s, this took some time to start printing, and that reinforces why I think that it is heat related. Oh, look at that. I can't believe that worked. So there is a way to do double exposures with this camera. You just can only do them in print, and all you have, I can't believe I lined that up so perfectly. Holy cow. I don't know if you can see that, but the center of the lens is lined up, well, for this format, as close to perfect as possible. So at any rate, so you can do double exposures on print, just not digitally. So there are some things about the Print-O-Matic that it lacks that I wish it had. The first thing is a tripod bushing. Just something down here to connect it to a tripod would make my life a lot easier when I'm out in the field using it. Honestly, the shutter speeds on this are so fast, it's not the end of the world that it doesn't have one. Would be nice. The next thing is that it would be nice if there was a switch to turn the printer off so that I could decide when I wanted to print a picture or not. Or, in lieu of that, this is metal. It would be nice if there had been two contacts down here, and if there wasn't a circuit made with this metal thing, then clearly there's paper here and it should print. But if there is a circuit, clearly there's not paper here. The printer should not turn on. That would have been a very easy way to save paper for people. And anyway, because it is really easy to accidentally take shots that print out, ruin a sheet of paper, and, you know, that's that. Okay. This is the first recording session that I've done with our new dog, Steinbeck, and he's letting me know that he is very bored by this whole process. I haven't told him that there are 6 more cameras to do after this one tonight. So, at any rate, another thing that I really, really wish this camera had that it lacked, we'll see when I turn it over here in just a second. There we go. So another thing that this camera should have that it lacks is like a raised ridge around the lens like the Smile has. Because I glued this filter ring in here so that if I accidentally set it down or the camera got knocked over, that the lens wasn't instantly ruined. Because this is soft plastic. You can see that abrasion right there that came from me keeping this camera in my pocket. So if you can imagine that happening very quickly with this camera on the lens, the $2 investment for a step down ring, because there's a little bit more surface area to glue with, and a little tiny bead of super glue holding it in place is really worth the investment. And this is a 62 to 58 millimeter step down ring. You could actually go smaller than that. You could probably do something like a 52 to 49. I just wasn't sure what the angle of view was on this. And I've been able to stack like 5 filters on this without them impeding the image area. So there's clearly plenty of added space with this setup, so you could do a smaller filter ring if you wanted to. One nice thing about having a filter ring is that it allows you to put a lens cap on. And as I demonstrated earlier, if you want to save some paper with your camera, it will always automatically print whenever you take a photo, if it'll turn on, that is. So anytime you take a picture with the Kodak Print-O-Matic, even if you accidentally hit the button, it's going to take a photo. But if you have the lens cap on, it will interpret that as there not being enough light for a photo, and it won't take one and it won't print, which means that $2 lens cap, $2 step down ring has saved me probably $25 in zinc paper since September. So huge and worthwhile investment to do that, to modify your camera that way. The other thing is it allows you to put filters onto your camera. This is one of the ones I use. This is just a basic sepia filter. A little bit dusty, that's okay, it's a super lo-fi camera. And this allows me to color correct. The photos from this camera are super blue, super cool toned. The sepia filter makes them moderately warm toned. So here's a sample photo taken without a sepia filter, and the same photo taken with a sepia filter. So you can see that having that filter does have some benefits. If you wanted to use an orange filter with your black and white shooting to make the skies dark, it does that. It adds a lot of noise, but it does darken your skies. You could use a polarizing filter. I've done that. Diamond prism filters, starburst filters. Get creative, right? This is a fun camera to use for fun, so you shouldn't be taking what filters you can and can't use super duper seriously. I like to use the sepia filter almost all the time with my color shooting because it makes the yellows and oranges really pop. Without the sepia filter, they're kind of muted. And it also turns the skies sort of a warm blue instead of being this cold, cold blue. So I can't stress enough how much I recommend getting a step down ring and a lens cap and a little tube of super glue to fix it in place, and getting a couple filters to have fun with. Definitely worth it if you're using one of these. So some notes on this camera. It is, like I've said, super simple and fun to use. It's fantastic also to give random photos to strangers. There have been a number of times when I've been out walking and people have seen me with this and it shoots out a photo, and I've been able to take a photo of them and hand it to them on the spot. And because these have adhesive backs on them, they can then go and stick those photos to something if they want to. My wife and I have a couple of canvas boards where we've been taking photos of our hikes together and the dogs that we've been fostering and now have rescued, and putting them up on the canvas boards. And I have one I do for my hikes that I do alone while she's doing other stuff on Saturdays. And that's a lot of fun to do, is just have these printed stickers around to stick up and make into collage boards. These are awesome for film photographers who want to preview their shot, like I said, especially large format photographers. And this has really saved me a lot of money in large format film, because I've taken a shot and looked at it and said, you know what, that's not working from this angle, I'm not going to take it. And I don't have to find that out after I get the photo developed. Sometimes photos look better in your mind or on the ground glass than they do on paper or digitally. As of November 2019, when I'm filming this, February 2018 is the most recent firmware version for this camera. I don't know when that firmware was rolled out to production units, so this was made in November 2018. I have to assume it has that firmware, but maybe the February 2018 cameras didn't, I don't know. So there's a link in the description to a Kodak page where you can download the firmware if you want to update it. There are instructions on that page, but honestly, those instructions are not incredibly helpful. So I don't need to update the firmware on this camera, but if yours is older than February 2018 and you haven't updated the firmware, it might be worth it. Apparently, there are some stability improvements in it. Resetting your camera, like I showed you how to do. Oh, Jiminy, that's so bright. Oh, that's so bright. So resetting your camera won't be frequent, but it is something that you might have to do if it locks up, and that's how you do it. Also, the camera outputs 10 megapixel images. They are 3680 by 2760 pixels. If you like to pixel peep, this is not the camera to do it with, because they're 10 megapixels, but they're kind of a soft 10 megapixels. I suspect it's both the optics and the sensor that combine to do that. If you have a 10 megapixel DSLR, for sure, point and shoot, mirrorless camera, digital bridge camera, even a cell phone that's 3 or 5 years old, you're gonna get equivalent to almost guaranteed, in most of those cases, way better photos from a technical perspective. But this is also super light, easy to put in your back pocket, and prints photos when you take them. So it does take 10 megapixel photos, so they will stand up to being shared online as well as printed. And if you have one you really like, you could print it definitely 5x7, maybe slightly larger. I know with a really good 6 megapixel sensor, like on a DSLR, you could print up to 11x14 with a 6 megapixel camera. This might print up to 8x10, okay, but that I think would really be pushing the limits of this camera's 10 megapixel images. So some things not to do with your Kodak Print-O-Matic. Don't leave it in your car, especially in the summer when it gets super hot. It doesn't have the oils and lubricants that can get thin and mess things up, but it is plastic, which can warp in the heat. And I understand that the printer and definitely the paper have an upper limit of heat tolerance before they start being damaged. Also, the cold can cause your plastic to shrink a little bit and can damage your camera as well. Also, don't let your camera get wet. This is not weather sealed, and there are entry points for water literally on every side of this camera. Well, not this one, but on all the other sides of the camera, there's a way for water to get into it. So you don't want to let this camera get wet, because that will short and ruin the camera. And just remember, your camera is a precision tool, and as long as you take care of your Kodak Print-O-Matic, your camera will take care of you. So if this was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track creating content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below. I'm pretty good about responding to those every couple of days. And if you are an amateur photographer who has taken pictures with a Kodak Print-O-Matic, also feel free to share a link to your work in the comments. I'd be happy to see the kind of work that other people are doing with these. If you have suggestions or ideas for future videos, please leave those below. And if I have the equipment and technical know-how, I'm happy to make those. And one last thing, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next camera review manual series.